Thank you very much. It's always a better bet to stand at the beginning because you don't know how it's going to go at the end. So I very much appreciate that. I want to start with a few thank yous. Of course, I want to thank Pat and the whole Rotary Club. I've been a member of the Rotary Club, the Downtown Kansas City, Kansas Rotary Club since 1999, and friends and colleagues, and I just appreciate the opportunity and humbled to be here at this activity with you today. So thank you to the Rotary Club for hosting this. I also want to recognize Joe Reardon and Carol Marinovich. If you two could please stand and we can give them a hand, our former mayors here at the Unified Government. Carol and I agreed ahead of time. We've never heard a bad State of the Government address. So I appreciate you two and your continuing success and your continuing support. I want to recognize our new county administrator. Last year, I spent a good portion of the time thanking Dennis Hayes for his long time of service, and since then, I have hired Doug Bach as our new county administrator. Mr. Bach, would you please stand and we can recognize you. I also want to recognize friends and colleagues, Mayor Tiny McTaggart and Jeff Harrington from Bonner Springs and Edwardsville. Thank you for being here. And then we also have representatives from Congressman Yoder's office, Senator Moran's office, and U.S. District Attorney Barry Grissom. Thank you all for being here. We want to thank Jerry Gorman, our District Attorney, for being here, and several members of our judiciary. We appreciate your partnership. Also want to recognize our state partners. A lot of the economic development I'm going to talk about are possible because of the work with the governor and with our state legislators, as well as the secretaries at the state. Those partnerships are critical. And the partnerships in our community with the CVB, the Wyandotte Economic Development, and the Chamber of Commerce. So thank you all for your support as well. We also have with us today Sheriff Don Ash, Fire Chief Paul Jones, and Police Chief Terry Ziegler. So thank you all and your teams for being here, as well as give our public safety group a round of applause. We also have representatives from the other elected bodies in the community, without whom we could not do our work on behalf of the community. It takes a whole village. We have representatives from the Board of Public Utilities. Can the Board of Public Utilities please stand? Board members and staff. You know who you are. Let's welcome them. Thank you. We also have great support today from the educational institutions, from our school districts, the Community College Board and Donnelly College, where if you represent one of the educational institutions, will you please stand as well? Thank you. Thank you very much. We also want to thank members of the neighborhood leaders. It's very important that we recognize the neighborhood leaders. We have a lot of the neighborhood groups here. If you're with one of the neighborhood groups, I know there's a whole crew over here. Would you please stand so we can thank you for your day-to-day work working with our neighborhoods? Another group over here. Thank you. I also want to thank my colleagues at the Unified Government. We have a great team at the Unified Government. We have 2,200 hardworking employees. And if you are an employee of the Unified Government, would you just stand so we can thank you for your ongoing work? Employees of the Unified Government? All right, thank you. And I also want to recognize my colleagues, elected officials on the Board of Commissioners. I had the privilege of serving on the Board of Commissioners for 6 years and have had the privilege for the last 2 years to serve with this august body. I want to recognize Gail Townsend, Brian McKiernan, Ann Murgia, Terrence Maddox, Mike Kane, Angela Markley, Jim Walters, Jane Philbrook, and Hal Walker. Would you all please stand so you can be recognized and we can show our appreciation to you. Thank you. When we talk about all the achievements we've had in the last 2 years, and they are many, there's no I in team, and it takes this group working together to accomplish all that we have, and so I'm very appreciative of their being here. I also want to recognize my staff. Bless their hearts. But I want to recognize Maureen and Lindsay, Jason, Rachel, Jasmine, and Bill, who have worked very hard for the last 2 years, and especially on this event. So if you all could stand, I would just want to thank you again. Thanks. And finally, I want to thank my family. Being mayor takes some time, you might be surprised to know. And it takes some time away from family. There are opportunities, obviously, when we get to do some things together, which have been fun. But it does take some time, and without my family's support, I wouldn't be able to do it. I do have my mom and dad over here and several of their friends. Mom and Dad, could you stand so we can welcome Marcy and Reverend Dr. Ron Holland. My mom, by the way, taught in District 500 for 16 years at Hazel Grove and Central Middle School. We value public education in our home. I also want to thank my 2 boys, Daniel and Gabriel, and of course my wife, Julie, without whom I couldn't do any of it. Thank you, dear. Opportunity and possibility, I believe, are what Kansas City, Kansas has more than anything and more than ever before. For so many years, that opportunity and possibility in Kansas City, Kansas lay dormant. But we've had tremendous success in the last few years, and I want to share just a little bit about it. And I'm going to frame it in the context of the 3 pillars of my administration, which are economic development, innovation, and healthy communities. But the economic development is really the piece that has captured the imagination not only of our community, but of the entire region and the state, and even gathering national attention for the leadership that Wyandotte County has shown in the transformation that has gone on in the last several years. I tell everyone that I stand on the shoulders of giants. If it had not been for Carol Marinovich and Joe Reardon, Dennis Hayes, all of the group of commissioners that worked during those last 20 years to really make the things possible that we're doing today. The opportunities that Carol had as mayor were much lower than the opportunities Joe Reardon had. And the opportunities I have are still more because of the work that both of those individuals did and the teams that worked with them. I want to share a story that's very familiar because this is a story that people ask me about anywhere I go. They ask me about the Village West area and the Speedway. If you remember back in 1995, there were about 150 homes there paying about $175,000 in property tax. And we had major retail out there. We had a gas station, a liquor store, and a Kentucky Fried. And all the jobs that went with it. Village West today currently pays over $17 million annually in property tax. It generates over $650 million in annual sales, and it has 9,000 jobs that were not there in 1995. A tremendous success story that continues to capture people's imagination. We are stated, because of the vision of those that went before and the Star Bond project, the Star Bonds are the most innovative economic development tool really anywhere in the country. And it's a great partnership with the state. 2/3 of the Star Bonds are state, about 1/3 are local. And that Star Bond payoff is getting ready to pay off finally in 2017. We will have about $12 million in new revenue. And I'm very proud of the work that the Commission is doing. We have been making that Star Bond payoff a focal area of our strategic planning for the last 2 years as we talk about how we can not just spend that money, but actually invest it in our community for the greatest good. The reality is, with $12 million, we could spend all of that just with catching up our employees on salaries that have been frozen for too long. We could spend all of that just in infrastructure improvements. We could spend all of that just in lowering taxes. In fact, we could spend all of that money in any one of these areas and not be fully caught up. So the challenge of strategic planning is to make sure that we're investing that money wisely and we're investing it in a way that's going to have the maximum impact for the long term. And one of the biggest challenges is when you spend it, depending on how you spend it, you can spend it again the next year. If you put it into debt financing, or you put it into mill levy reduction, or you put it into cost of living, you spend it once and that remains spent for into the future. So we need to be strategic about how we do that. You will not be surprised to learn the line has already formed to help us spend that money. So we do have public budget hearings, and you can continue with your suggestions. We appreciate those. but it's pretty clear. Our community wants lowered taxes, more infrastructure development, and we need to take care of our employees because our employees have borne the brunt of the recession in a way that no one else has. And we appreciate very much their patience in staying with us. But the Star Bond payoff is the biggest issue on our horizon and another great opportunity that's filled with possibilities. Right now we have wonderful things happening. We have the casino hotel is going to standing committee, so you'll start seeing the casino hotel move through. That's been a long-awaited asset in our community. I'm excited about the T-Bones. We're now the proud owners of the T-Bone Stadium, and they are putting in a new scoreboard this year. So you'll want to get out to the T-Bones and see all the great improvements that are going on out there, and always a great time for the family. We have, in addition to the destination that we have in Village West, we're the #1 tourist destination in the state of Kansas and the #1 tourist destination in the region. In fact, we have a number of assets that would each qualify as the #1 tourist destination in the state, and we have 4 or 5 of them right there. But in addition to the tourist destination pieces like Schlitterbahn and Verrückt, the world's tallest water slide, which I got to go down, and my kids went down it. My wife chickened out. Amen. So you did not go down it. But we went down the world's largest water slide. Schlitterbahn is great family fun, and it's a great draw into our community, and they continue to grow. We also see out in Village West, in addition to the retail, we're actively working on housing. The apartment complexes that are going out there, the luxury apartments across from Target, 300 new units, so successful they're doubling the progress and doing 300 more units. Tremendous asset and tremendous quality that's going in right now. We also have on the Schlitterbahn property a new auto plaza. You've probably seen the dirt being moved at Parallel and 435. That's 6 new auto dealerships. After generations of watching auto dealerships leave the community, it's a delight to see them come back and bring their sales tax and property tax back to our community, and that's going to be a great engine for further economic development. Stay with me, I'm here all night. We're very excited also about the U.S. soccer. The U.S. soccer part is just an additional component to the terrific development that was Cerner, the soccer stadium, and the youth soccer fields, as well as the soccer fields in town. The soccer stadium is built, Cerner is open, 4,000 jobs, high-paying jobs in our western part of our community. And instead of 3 urban soccer fields, we made a change with Sporting Kansas City to provide 10 futsal courts. And futsal courts I had never heard of, but apparently everyone else in the world has. But this is a soccer game played 5-on-5 on a tennis court size court with asphalt, and the kids love it. We have 2 courts open at Wyandotte. There's a line outside, maybe not on the coldest days, but there's a line outside of it for kids wanting to play. We're putting 10 of those around the community. But the U.S. soccer brings not only a new development that's going to bring additional tourism to the Village West area, it's also going to complete the vision we had for youth soccer fields. The reason we want youth soccer fields, again, is we have the tourist asset with the hotels, with the retail. We want to continue to drive tourism to this area, and it's a great opportunity. The biggest new development that you've just been announced, and I'm very proud to announce, Gabriel, could you bring me my water, please? It'll allow me to talk longer. Thank you. I should have picked Daniel. Daniel doesn't mind being on stage. Gabriel prefers to be behind the camera. The latest announcement, obviously, the Dairy Farmers of America. Very exciting announcement. Very proud to be the new home of this multi-million-dollar international business. You know, for me, it has a personal tone because I grew up in the city, born and raised in the city, don't know much but the city. In fact, there's a really sad story my parents will tell of driving in the car one time when I was 5 or 6 years old, and we were driving past a field with cows, and I had driven past fields with cows before. But one of the cows started moving. And I said, look, the cows can move. And my sisters were obviously horrified. My parents realized they needed to get me out of the city more. So several years later, we were at my Uncle Dale's farm. My Uncle Dale was a dairy farmer, and he had a farm by Bucyrus, Kansas. And they took me out to give me a little exposure. I spent the day with my uncle. I even got to milk a couple of cows. At the end of the day, my uncle pulled me aside. A giant, massive man with a hand probably as big as my head. And he said, "Mark, son, I want you to stay in school." Clearly, my time as a dairy farmer had been an utter failure. I learned a long time ago, you never run your jokes by your staff because they'll spend the whole week trying to talk you out of them. No, but when you think about the dairy farmers, they're going to build 100,000 square feet of Class A office space. It's going to have a $30 million capital investment, 350 jobs, averaging $92,000 a year. They also bring in a number of groups from outside, from around the country, to use our hotels, our restaurants, our retail. It's really a great driver, and with Cerner as the first Class A office, this is another example of the kind of Class A office that we can build and continue to diversify. Now, you may have noticed in the paper there's a picture of the front of the Dairy Farmers building, but I'm telling you the best part of it, if you see all the plans and you go around behind it and you see one of the Metro's most robust derrieres. You didn't get it. One of the most robust derrieres. I'll keep telling the same joke till you laugh. I'm telling you, we're going to milk this development till the cows come home, and maybe the jokes too. But the dairy farmers are another example of what a team can do. Our state partners, our commission partners, and our outstanding economic development staff who have worked tirelessly on this deal for a very long time. And I think our economic development staff deserve a round of applause for their outstanding work, led by Doug Bach. But the opportunity and possibility is not just out west. 78th and State, we've seen the development of a new price chopper, as large and beautiful a price chopper as anywhere in the metropolitan area. We're getting a new Marshall's, a PetSmart. We just opened Krispy Kreme today. Healthy Communities Wyandotte. In Argentine, we also opened a new grocery store with the Walmart. In Rosedale, KU is doing a $75 million education building. Fairway North, which is an older strip center near Kansas City Joe's Barbecue, is getting a complete transformation with Lane 4. We have a new bus service in Rosedale, the 105. And now that Joe Reardon's the new director of the ATA, we're expanding all the bus service throughout Kansas City, Kansas. Thank you in advance, Mr. Reardon. No, it's the same price. That's right. They're paying for it all. In Armourdale, we have major investment from the PQ headquarters and Wilhite, which continue to grow. Armourdale doesn't get a lot of press, but a lot of great manufacturing and building going on in Armourdale right now. In Muncie, J.E. Dunn has brought their logistics center, a $48 million logistics center to Muncie, which is a great investment. In Fairfax, right now, we're building over 1 million square feet of new manufacturing around the General Motors plant. The manufacturing renaissance in America is real, and it's coming back to Kansas City, Kansas, and Fairfax is uniquely positioned. We have some great partners in Fairfax, including Mark I Electric, who has purchased a lot of the property there and is rebuilding it as we speak. So the Fairfax is continuing to move. I said when I was first elected, my top 2 urban priorities were Indian Springs and downtown. That continues to be true. We've enlisted Lane 4 to help us with Indian Springs. You may note that even with the great mall closing in Olathe, virtually every closed mall in the metro area has now closed. From Metro North to Metcalf South, Bannister Mall is gone, the Great Mall is gone. Only Overland Park, Oak Park Mall is the only one that remains that continues to be profitable. The outdoor malls, whether it's the Legends or Zona Rosa, are clearly the wave of the next generation. Turning Indian Springs into something productive is a high priority. You may have seen construction out there where we've been taking the asbestos out in preparation for either a transformation or a complete teardown. But we're working with Lane 4, who's been one of our great urban partners, to get that Indian Springs site in a highest and best use for our community. We're also very pleased that in downtown we have Loretto Properties buying into the 700 block, renovating buildings in the 700 block of Minnesota Avenue, and preparing for a transformation downtown. I'll say more about downtown transformation in a moment. But these opportunities and possibilities for economic development are critical. But the most critical piece is to make sure that our kids and our community are able to access these great jobs. That means education has to continue to be a priority, workforce development has to continue to be a priority. We have to make sure that our kids are trained for these initiatives. That's why I'm very proud of the Department of Justice initiative that I've taken on with public safety. I mentioned this at the State of the Government last year, and since that time, the Department of Justice has come alongside the unified government, and we've walked through a process. And we decided if we were going to look at hiring for public safety, police, fire, and sheriff, to make sure that the diversity of the unified government represents the diversity of our entire community, we needed the national expertise of the Department of Justice. I'm very proud to say all the educational institutions are involved, the school districts, the community college, Donnelly College, the police chief and the fire chief and the sheriff are all actively engaged and are stressing the importance of this. The commissioners have each appointed someone or themselves to this initiative. We're all taking it very seriously, and we're all moving down a path where I believe by April we will have real recommendations that we can bring to the Commission for budget consideration in this budget year. I don't want to wait another year before we start taking proactive action to diversify our community. When we have 42% white, 28% Latino, and 25% black, and about 7% Asian, I believe that if we can hire local, we will also have the diversity we expect. And I can't ask the great companies in our community to hire local if the unified government isn't leading the way. So I want to thank all of the partners for the Department of Justice. I want to thank all of the leadership team that's helping with that. Reverend Jimmy Banks is the chairperson of that and is doing an outstanding job keeping us on task in a meeting with 40 people, which is no easy task. But I very much appreciate the movement that we're making, and that Department of Justice is going to bear great fruit that we can all be proud of. Thank you. The opportunity and possibility is because we already have some of the most innovative companies in the entire world. Between Cerner, KU Med and Hospital, General Motors, and now Dairy Farmers of America, we have some of the most innovative companies that can help lead the next generation of employment in our community. We also have Google. We were the first city in the nation to get Google Fiber. Google Fiber 1.0 is virtually complete. The backbone of the installation is done, and most of the first signups have all been installed. We're ready for Google 2.0, where we can go out and continue to close the digital divide in our community, because we know that internet access is not simply a luxury, it really is a utility, because jobs and education, healthcare, all of these are accessible on the internet, and we need to make sure that the 25% of our community that does not currently have internet access has the same tools for their life that everyone else has. And the Google 2.0 is going to be an opportunity for us to partner with our providers to continue to close that gap. I'm also very excited. Google just announced about 6 months ago, but we haven't done a major push for their small business access for Google. This is a huge announcement. Most of the very big companies have been able to buy gigabyte access to the current providers, but the opportunity for a small business to be able to have this kind of power and tool at their fingertips really has the opportunity to accelerate. And we'll be working with Google in the next several months to push that forward so we can make sure that this community here in Kansas City, Kansas is not only the first with Google Fiber, but the one that leads the way in the utilization of the tool and the capacity that it brings. We also are the home of Startup Village. Startup Village is getting national attention, national and regional attention. It's one of those things that gets more attention from outside of our community than it gets from within it. But the Startup Village is one of those places where it's an incubator, perhaps for the next Cerner, for the next General Motors, for the next Dairy Farmers. These are the people, young men and women, who are working to follow their dream of innovation, and the Startup Village has an opportunity because the vast majority of big companies started somewhere. And until we fully support Startup Village, I don't think we're going to get the new growth of new companies that we haven't even thought of yet. In-house innovation is another big piece. In addition to the innovation we have in the community, working within the unified government to push innovation is big. We just finished the installation of a $26 million radio system, which doesn't sound very exciting, frankly, and certainly the price tag is not very exciting. But it connects us, all of our public safety, to one another. The Board of Public Utilities all has the same radios. Bonner Springs, Edwardsville, but also all of Johnson, Jackson County, the entire metro area is now using the same public safety radio system. So in the event of a disaster, we can all communicate together. It's a major innovation, it's a major investment, and it's one of those pieces, it's kind of like investing in your furnace in your basement. You don't think about it very much until it goes out, but this radio system is really a backbone for communications in our community. Also, we have UGTV. We have had, for the full 2 years I've been mayor, insisted on having all of our meetings on television. I tell people, if you have trouble sleeping at night, you can tune in to UGTV, and in full transparency, we'll just lull you to sleep right there in your living room. But UGTV, we also have live streaming. This is the first State of the Government address for the unified government that's being live streamed on the internet. Let's say hi to everybody out in internet land. Hello, everybody. Yeah. It's like 4 people. We're also doing a major customer service revamp at the UG, and this is being led by Renee Ramirez, our outstanding human resource director. We went to KU Medical. KU Medical, if you might remember, had a very bad reputation about 20 years ago. Of course, the unified government, the Kansas City, Kansas had kind of a bad reputation 20 years ago. And we've both grown up side by side. But KU went through, as part of their transformation, a comprehensive customer service training for all of their employees. And it was so successful, it pushed them up into the national rankings for healthcare and national rankings for quality. They have offered to come to the unified government and work with us to show us how we can implement a similar training for all of our unified government departments, particularly those that touch the public on a regular basis. So the Human Resources Department is managing this and will be rolling this out starting this year. We've also heard loud and clear. We had some misses at the Driver's License Bureau. Don't throw any tomatoes. We have taken action. But we also have set up an online queue system where you can make an appointment to come in so you don't have to wait in line. Another innovation that we're working hard to serve our community. Another big innovation is open data. Open data is a buzzword that you hear around the country right now, particularly with municipal governments. The idea around open government is everything that's eligible for a Freedom of Information request, that is any public information, instead of waiting for someone to ask for it, just put it online. Just take the data set and put it online so people can find it. And I'm very pleased to say in 2015, we will be rolling out the entire unified government budget, all 300 pages and $300 million of it, online, that will be fully accessible for anyone in the community that would like to see how the unified government is spending its money by department. It's an innovation that many cities are doing, but I expect we will lead the region with this opportunity to show you the transparency of our award-winning finances that we have at the unified government. Also, we have public safety studies. I said last year at my State of the Government address that our public safety, the best in the world, is also on a trajectory of an unsustainable budget, and committed at that time to do studies for the fire department, the police department, and the sheriff's department to make sure that we were doing best practice, cutting-edge things that can keep the costs from rising to a point where we can no longer sustain it. I have said frequently the number one risk to our public safety is our inability to continue to fund it. And rather than making willy-nilly cuts or doing something that's based on hunch or instinct rather than based on data, we need to have the studies so we have the actual data to make the decisions that are going to help move our community forward. I'm very pleased that the fire study is already underway, and in partnership with the administration, with the fire leadership, as well as the union leadership in the fire, help to write the notice of need, help to evaluate the group that's coming in, and help to hire the group that's going to be doing the evaluation. It's going to be in partnership with all of us to make sure that as we evaluate our fire department, we want to make sure that all of the stakeholders are at the table so we can provide safety not only for our community, but also for the men and women who work on our department. That study should be completed in the next 3 months. And my hope is it will be in time for us to make some budgetary considerations if necessary. We're also having a lot of innovation with our police department. The police and sheriff have been working close hand in hand because what we've discovered nationally is that we're locking up a lot of the mentally ill who could be receiving services if they weren't in jail. And the sheriff and the police have worked together with a crisis intervention training, the CIT training, trains officers in the street and sheriff's deputies that when you pick someone up, to be able to differentiate what looks like a mental health crisis versus what looks like perhaps a drug addiction, or when you can help to identify someone who needs to go to a treatment center rather than jail. And what we already know is that jail costs $92 a day, and treatment is a fraction of that. It's one of the few times you can actually do the right thing and save money. And because of the leadership of our police and sheriff, we see our numbers going down in jail and the services people receive going up. We've also partnered again with the state and with Johnson County to reopen Rainbow Mental Health as a 24-hour crisis center where police officers can take their people they pick up and take them for help. And they can actually get medication, they can get a case manager, they can get back on the right path rather than just going to jail. The next step, of course, is to work with our fire department so that because a lot of the ambulance pickups that we do, a lot of our first responders are dealing with mental health crises and not necessarily physical health crises. And if we can work it out so our ambulances can take folks to the crisis intervention as well, it will again free up resources in how we spend our money. Johnson County is already doing that. It's a great innovation, and I trust we're moving forward. The last piece of innovation I want to say is our police department has already been looking into, for the past 4 months, the possibility of body cameras for our officers. Body cameras are not the end-all and be-all of police work. They are a potential tool that could significantly help provide for the safety of our officers as well as the safety of our citizens. We're going to take a very careful look at this. It's extremely expensive because it's not just a camera that you strap on. You ought to have a computer where you're tracking the data you're recording. Because I don't know how you do it at your house, but Julie and I and our kids, we take our phones and about every couple months, we dump all our pictures into the computer in a file named Pictures, right? Super handy when you want to find one. If we treat our police data like that and dump it all into a file called Video, it will be worthless. It's going to take a significant investment in IT and in people to run the system in order to support it. We also need to work through the emerging national issues around privacy and other issues. We don't take any of these issues lightly, but we should lead the region in utilizing this technology to the point at which it can be productive for all of us. But those innovations, I expect, we're going to continue to move forward. I should have had a big whiz-bang there where you could clap for something, but I didn't. Opportunity and possibility continues with Healthy Communities Wyandotte. Healthy Communities is one of the most important facets, and this is actually growing across the nation. And I'm proud to say that Kansas City, Kansas, and Wyandotte County are leading the way in our rollout of Healthy Communities. We obviously have communication around Healthy Communities, education, and not just education about healthcare, but education generally. And this is a startling statistic that you might already be aware of, but a student who graduates from high school lives on average 6 years longer than a student who does not. And someone who graduates from college lives 6 years longer than that. Literally adding 12 years of life expectancy to someone simply through education makes it a primary push. I'm pleased that our education team is working with District 500's Read Today, Lead Tomorrow program. And we're also partnering with Children's Mercy Hospital that reached out to Healthy Communities Wyandotte to pilot a new program that they're promoting called 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Fit-tastic. Doesn't that sound fantastic? So I want you to learn with me here. We're going to learn what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Fit-tastic is, and you can implement it today. Are you ready? Number 1 is at least 1 hour of play or exercise a day. You with me? All right, we've got some work to do. Number 2 is no more than 2 hours of screen time. And a screen can be a TV, a computer, it can be a tablet, it can be a phone, no more than 2 hours of screen time a day. What did I say? Both. Adults and children, right? The kids hate that rule. Number 3 are 3 servings of low-fat dairy. Not just chewing the cud here, this is a real thing that can help you be healthy. Number 4 is 4 servings of water, non-sugary drinks. And that's for all of us. 4 servings of water and non-sugary drinks. Sugary drinks are not our friends. And finally, 5 servings of fruits and vegetables. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Fit-tastic. It's a program that we're teaching our children in school so they can learn as they grow up and learn to be healthy. That's the education piece. Access to healthy food. We have the H2O to Grow program, which we're very proud of. We also have received national recognition through the National Cities of Service for our community gardens. A lot of great things are happening with access to healthy food. And building grocery stores is fundamental to continue to move this forward. Also access to healthy infrastructure. So many great things happening. The Harmon Hub, a group of students at Harmon wanted to be healthier, and they raised money for a half-mile walking trail right there at Harmon, a big initiative for the kids for healthy communities. A new bike lane on 10th Street going all the way from Johnson County up to the river, the Missouri River, the full length of our community. It's a grant through the Mid-America Regional Council, and it's going to be one of the longest on-street bike trails in the entire community, and we're very excited about that. We're also excited about Soccer Nation coming in. Soccer Nation down in Turner is providing recreation for hundreds of kids on a regular basis. We also have the levee trail opening. Wyandotte County has a great access to levee trails around our community. We have dozens of miles of them, and we're one of the few communities that doesn't allow hike and bike on the trails. We're working on that right now, but Manhattan, Topeka, Lawrence, Riverside, Parkville, Kansas City, Missouri, all allow hike and bike on their river trails. So we're working on that, but the Kaw Valley Drainage District led the way in offering access to one of their levee trails as a pilot program, and we're so grateful for their leadership in that, so we can begin to open up really what is the low-hanging fruit of our community for hike and bike. And so the levee trail project is well underway. Another big piece, that's a big point. I think we should clap about that. Access to health care. 5% of the state's population, 10% of the state's uninsured. The Affordable Care Act has the ability to cut that in half. The expansion of Medicaid could cut it in half again. In the last 2 years, Enroll Wyandotte, which has been an enormous partnership from Healthy Communities Wyandotte, our office, our safety net clinics, our hospital partners, it's been everybody helping. We have been able to enroll over 9,000 individuals who have never had health care before, and move the percentage in our community from 26% uninsured to 18% uninsured. That's real progress, and it makes a big difference. I also continue to advocate for the expansion of Medicaid. The expansion of Medicaid is not only support for the poor and the poorest among us who do not have any access to health care, it's also a huge support for our hospitals. Bob Page from KU told me last year they lost $30 million in unreimbursed care because of the lack of expansion of Medicaid and dollars that are designated to that program to go to our hospitals. Imagine the quality of care that they could provide if they had $30 million additional dollars to expand their services. The expansion of Medicaid is fundamentally important from economic development. The state is leaving $3 billion with a B on the table that we refuse to take for this. I know we're taking federal money for education, for transportation, yes, and I know we're taking federal subsidies for agriculture. I doubt if we called it Obama culture that people would stop taking their agricultural subsidy. We need to take the money that was designated for health care, serve the poor, help our hospitals, and grow the economic benefit of health care in our region and in our state. It's critically important. Healthy campus. We're looking at a new grocery store. We're looking at a new community center run by the Y. As we started to roll that out, thinking this is an opportunity downtown that could really move the needle on all of the areas of Healthy Communities Wyandotte, right here in one of the most challenged areas. We had great support from LISC, the Health Foundation, and the Greater Kansas City Health Foundation and the REACH Foundation, who all helped fund the master plan that many of you have probably seen of the new downtown healthy campus. We've also, as we've unrolled that, we've also reached out. The commission was very generous last year to commit $6 million of casino money towards this project for the community center because people downtown need to see, touch, and feel the benefit out west in the urban area. That $6 million is contingent on being able to raise the rest of the money in the philanthropic community. We've already raised another $1 million. The Wyandotte Health Foundation stepped forward and made their largest single gift ever. We're now at $7 million, and we have half the money for the community center. We are actively going out to the philanthropic community with our partnership, the YMCA. The YMCA has over 100 years of ministry in our community and are ready for the next 100 years, but it's going to take a new building. So we're actively working on pushing that forward. If you have $7 million, I would like you to see me afterwards, and we will work out a naming right for that new community center. This healthy campus has received national attention from the National Resource Network, through the White House, the National League of Cities, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. We have received philanthropic dollars to pay full-time for 2 years a project manager to oversee this project and its implementation. The nation is taking notice at what we're doing, and they're watching to see, because they believe, like I do, if we can move the needle on healthcare in downtown Kansas City, Kansas, we can move the needle anywhere, and we can do it as a partnership in our community. Finally, opportunity and possibility. Kansas City, Kansas, in the last 2 years, see, last year I had to give Joe credit. I don't have to give him credit anymore. Under my leadership, $1.25 billion in economic development. The 4,000 new jobs we created last year represented 30% of all new jobs in the state of Kansas and 40% of all new jobs in the metropolitan area. Ladies and gentlemen, we're growing Kansas City, Kansas right now. But I want to close talking not about the economic development, innovation, and healthy communities, but close talking about the people. The people of Kansas City, Kansas are what make it special and have always made it special. Wyandotte County has a rich history of people coming here, people who were not welcome other places, coming to Wyandotte County to make it their home. And not only to make it their home, but to bind together one another to make it a great place to live and raise a family. The Native American people who were not wanted in the upper Sandusky of the Ohio River were moved here. We named our community after them, the Wyandottes. The American tragedy of the treatment of the Native Americans continued, as after we named our county after the Wyandottes, we moved them to Oklahoma. But the Native Americans left a lasting imprint on Kansas City, Kansas. 2 railroads brought other ethnic groups to our community. The Santa Fe Railroad brought a Latino group of people here more than 100 years ago, who were not allowed to settle in just any area of the metropolitan area, but settled instead in the flood-prone area of Argentine, and established a strong ethnic community whose roots run deep and continues to lift up leadership in our community. Another railroad, the Underground Railroad, brought African Americans here before the Civil War, fleeing from slave states, coming into Kansas, establishing Quindaro, establishing a new community. That African American community has deep roots here, which continues to raise up leaders for our community and provides a basis and a context for cultural strength. We often forget that Catholics used not to be welcome everywhere. And many Catholics, as they moved to this community, the poorer Catholics who came for the packing plants from all over Eastern Europe and some Eastern Orthodox religion as well, came to an area that came to be known as Strawberry Hill and settled it and planted a different ethnic church on virtually every corner and created one of the richest fabrics of diversity in our community. A great asset, a great strength for people who weren't necessarily welcome in other places. I'm struck also by the Hmong community. The Hmong community were the allies of the U.S. services during the Vietnam War. They lived in the Vietnam area, but they didn't consider themselves Vietnamese, and they're the allies of the CIA during the war in Vietnam. After the end of that war and the loss of that war, the United States brought many members of the Hmong community to Kansas City, Kansas, and to Minneapolis. And we have a very strong Hmong community here that continues to add to the richness and the diversity of our community. I also want to say I'm very proud for Wyandotte County to be a place in Kansas where our lesbian and gay brothers and sisters are welcome. We continue to issue, way ahead of the state pace, you might not be surprised, marriage licenses for gay marriage. I'm very proud that people can know that you're welcome here. And while there might be disagreements about gay and lesbian issues in our community, civil rights will never be debatable in Wyandotte County, and I'm proud to support them, and we will continue to do so. Finally, a group that is still seeking a toehold in the state of Kansas, a huddled mass who has gathered in Wyandotte County called the Democrats. Bless their hearts. But the Democrats in Wyandotte County continue to believe that you can build a city on prevailing wage, that you can build a city with labor, that you can build a city in partnership with first-time quality, that you can pay people a meaningful wage and not just a minimum wage. The Democrats in Wyandotte County believe that immigration will continue to be the strength of our city, as it has always been and as I hope it will always be. Immigrants are welcome in this community because you've made it strong in the past, and I know you will continue to. The Democrats in Wyandotte County believe that our teachers are our role models and not the enemy. That having a, thank you. That having a pension is not a crime, and that our educational institutions, K through 16, ought to be our pride and joy, and not just shifted over to the liability line, hoping that the next generation will take care of them. If we don't stand up for the values that have made this state great, if we don't stand up for the values that have made this city great, there isn't anyone else that's going to stand up for them, and I appreciate you standing up with me to make our city better than ever. Kansas City, Kansas, a place of opportunity and possibility because the people who have always been here. Thank you very much.